Have you ever sat quietly, truly quietly, and felt a heaviness that no achievement could lift? Not the tiredness that comes from a long day, but something older, something that lives beneath the surface of all your doing, all your striving, all the years you spent being exactly what everyone needed you to be. You wake up and the weight is already there. You finish the day and it is still there. And you begin to wonder silently in the moments before sleep whether this is simply what life feels like from the inside. You are not broken. You are not failing. What you are carrying is something very human, very old, and very rarely spoken about. It is the weight of a life lived largely for others, shaped by roles you never chose, measured by standards no one ever questioned. It is the exhaustion of decades spent proving, performing, holding everything together while quietly wondering whether anyone would notice if just once you let something fall. You have been strong for so long that strength stopped feeling like a choice and became a cage. You have been useful for so long that usefulness started to feel like the only reason you were allowed to take up space. And now, in the quieter chapters of life, when the noise begins to settle and the demands begin to thin, you are left with a question that feels almost too heavy to ask. Who am I when no one needs anything from me? This is not a small question. It is, in many ways, the most important question a human being can arrive at, and the fact that you are here, still searching, still willing to sit with it, means something. If this kind of reflection has been finding you lately in the early morning, in the long afternoon, in the silence between one thing and the next, I invite you to stay. There is something here that was made for exactly this moment in your life. Something shifts when you stop trying to fix what is actually ready to be released. Buddhist wisdom does not ask you to become someone different. It does not offer a program, a performance, or a destination. It offers something far more quietly radical than that. It offers permission. Permission to put down what was never truly yours to carry. Permission to stop measuring the hours by what they produced. Permission to inhabit your life fully as it is right now, in this exact season of your existence. The peace you are searching for is not waiting on the other side of one more effort. It has been waiting here beneath the weight. So asking only that you loosen your grip long enough to feel it, and loosening the grip, that is where we begin. The first thing the mind must be gently invited to release is the belief that your worth has something to do with what you produce. This belief runs so deep in the American experience that it barely feels like a belief at all. It feels like gravity. You were shaped by a culture that celebrates the early riser, the relentless worker, the person who never stops building. Rest was earned. Stillness was suspicious. And even now, decades later, there is a voice inside you that still asks, sometimes loudly, sometimes barely above a whisper, am I still needed? Am I still valuable? Am I doing enough to justify the space I occupy? Buddhist wisdom answers this question not by offering a different metric, but by dissolving the question itself. The Buddha spoke of inherent dignity, not a dignity you earn through service or sacrifice, but a dignity that belongs to consciousness itself. You do not need to justify your existence. A candle does not shine harder to prove it deserves to give light. It simply burns, quietly, offering warmth by its very nature. When you begin to loosen the grip on this old contract, the one that says your value depends on your usefulness, something physical happens. The shoulders drop, the jaw releases. The breath, which has been shallow for longer than you realize, finds a little more room to move. You are not here to perform, you are here to be. And being, it turns out, is enough. From that loosening, another release becomes possible. And because tied to the belief in earned worth is the belief in fixed identity, the roles you have inhabited so thoroughly that you stop noticing you were wearing them. The provider, the caretaker, the one who made the decisions and kept the household and showed up when everything else fell apart. These roles were real. They mattered. They shaped decades of your life and the lives of people you love. But there comes a moment when a coat that once fit perfectly begins to weigh you down. Keeping it does not honor who you were. It prevents you from moving freely now. Impermanence is not a threat in Buddhist thought. It is simply the truth of how things are. Everything changes, including the roles we play, the identities we inhabit, the ways we are needed. Suffering deepens not when things change, but when we refuse to allow the change. When you gently lay down an old role, not in resentment, not in grief, but in honest recognition that its season has passed, something unexpectedly beautiful appears in the space it leaves behind. Presence without obligation, connection without responsibility, love without the need to manage everything it touches. You are allowed to become simpler. The self that remains when the performing stops, quiet, observant, compassionate, is not smaller than the self you were before. It is freer. There is a particular habit of mind that thrives in the quieter years, and it does its damage so gently that most people never name it. It is the habit of returning to old conversations, returning to decisions made decades ago, and examining them from every angle, returning to moments that ache in ways that never fully healed. The mind moves back there with a kind of compulsive tenderness, as if looking long enough might finally change what happened. But the past is a mental construction. It exists only when you visit it, and each time you return, you strengthen its hold on the present moment, the only moment that is actually alive. Think of the past as a river you once crossed. It carried you. It taught you. But standing on the bank and staring back will not move you forward. Letting go does not mean forgetting. It means releasing the emotional grip, allowing memories to pass without entering them. When you stop reliving what cannot be changed, the present grows spacious in ways that surprise you. Colors return to small things. Breath feels deeper. Silence stops feeling like a reminder of loss and starts feeling like a kind of company. And then there is the exhausting work of managing how you are seen. Even in the later years of life, perhaps especially then, many people carry an old alertness, a constant low-level monitoring of the question, how do I appear? Am I respected? Am I invisible? Am I being judged for slowing down, for needing help, for no longer being the person I once was? This vigilance is genuinely tiring. It keeps the nervous system in a state of soft alarm when it is longing desperately for rest. The Buddha taught that other people's opinions are unstable by nature. They shift with mood, with circumstance, with misunderstanding. Building your peace on them is like building a house on moving water. Non-attachment in Buddhist thought is not withdrawal. It is freedom. You can care without clinging. You can be seen without being defined by what others see. In the later years of life, you are offered something rare in a culture that never stops performing, the genuine chance to stop editing yourself for approval, to speak more honestly, to move more slowly, to exist without the constant labor of impression management. This is not carelessness, it is authenticity. And in that authenticity, the mind grows quiet in a way it perhaps has not been quiet in years. There is something else that lives quietly in the chest of many people who have spent a lifetime being the strong one. A belief so internalized, it barely surfaces as thought. It simply operates, shaping behavior from the inside. The belief is this: I must not let myself be seen as weak. I must keep going. I must not ask for too much. I must not admit how tired I actually am. This belief was perhaps once protective. It helped you carry what needed to be carried. But there comes a point when the armor that once protected you begins to cost more than it gives. Buddhist wisdom makes a distinction that is worth sitting with slowly. True strength is not rigidity, it is flexibility. The Buddha observed that in great storms, it is not the stiff tree that survives, it is the one that bends. Vulnerability is not collapse, it is movement. When you allow yourself to say quietly and without apology that you are tired, that some days feel heavier than others, that you do not have all the answers and no longer feel the need to pretend otherwise, something happens in the body. The nervous system, which has been bracing for years, begins to release. The breath deepens without effort. Life stops feeling like a test you must pass and starts feeling, at last, like a moment you are allowed to inhabit. There is a thought that settles into the mind during certain seasons of life with the quiet authority of something that must be true, simply because it feels so familiar. It is the thought that says, it is too late. Too late to change, too late to heal, too late to find something that feels like peace. This thought does not announce itself dramatically. It settles. It shapes what you reach for and what you dismiss before reaching. It makes curiosity feel foolish and longing feel naive, and it robs the present of something it cannot afford to lose, the sense that this moment, right now, is still alive with possibility. Buddhist teaching offers a gentle correction here, not as argument, but as invitation. The present moment, whatever your age, has never happened before and will never happen again. To call it too late is to misunderstand time itself. Peace does not ask when you arrived. It only asks that you arrive. Joy does not expire, forgiveness does not expire, meaning does not expire. In old age, you may finally have what youth so urgently lacked: patience, perspective, the hard-won ability to see clearly what matters and what never did. These are not consolation prizes. They are treasures that only time could have given you. Over a lifetime, it is possible to accumulate not only your own experiences, but the emotional weight of others. Worry passed down through family, unspoken expectations, absorbed without question, guilt inherited from relationships, where you learned early to make yourself secondary. And many people carry this so naturally that they have forgotten it was ever a choice. You may notice it in the way your mind feels crowded with problems that are not yours to solve, in the way your body tightens in response to someone else's distress, in the way your own peace feels conditional on everyone around you being okay. There is a difference between caring and carrying. Caring is open, warm, freely given. Carrying is attachment. It ties your well-being to outcomes you cannot control and robs the other person of the dignity of their own experience. Buddhist practice encourages what might be called loving detachment, the capacity to wish someone well without merging with their suffering, to listen without absorbing, to support without sacrificing yourself in the process. And imagine setting down a basket of stones you have been carrying for years, not in anger, not in abandonment, but with the quiet recognition that you were never meant to hold all of this. When you set it down, space opens. Your own breath returns to you. And something surprising often follows. Relationships, freed from the weight of obligation, become lighter and more genuine. The need to control outcomes is perhaps the most exhausting habit the mind can carry. It disguises itself as responsibility, as love, as competence. It says, if I just think carefully enough, plan thoroughly enough, worry comprehensively enough, I can prevent the bad things. And so you grip, you monitor, You run the scenarios forward in your mind until every possibility has been examined and filed away. The anxiety this produces is immense. And the painful irony is that it changes almost nothing about what actually happens. Buddhist wisdom teaches that clinging to control is a subtle form of suffering, not because planning is wrong, but because the illusion that you can manage all of life's outcomes is itself the source of so much unnecessary pain. Life unfolds according to countless causes and conditions, most of which lie entirely beyond any single person's reach. The breath is a quiet teacher here. You do not control each breath. It arrives, departs, returns without your management, and yet it sustains you faithfully without effort. When you release the need to control what cannot be controlled, the body relaxes in ways that feel almost structural. The future becomes less of a battlefield and more of an open field, something you can walk into with presence rather than dread. And then there is this, the belief, quiet and persistent, that the best of life is already behind you. That joy belongs to memory now. That the kind of aliveness you once felt in the body, in the morning, in the simple fact of being here, is something younger people have, not you. This belief, when it takes hold, turns the present into a waiting room. It makes today into something to endure rather than something to inhabit. Buddhist thought offers a different understanding of happiness, not as excitement or intensity, but as ease, a deep okayness with things as they are. In younger years, joy often arrives as novelty, as achievement, as the sharp pleasure of something new. In the later years, a joy changes shape. It becomes quieter, slower, less dramatic, and in many ways more real. The warmth of a cup of tea held in both hands, the light through a window on an ordinary afternoon, a conversation that moves without urgency, without agenda, without needing to arrive anywhere in particular. These joys are easy to miss if you are still looking for the old kind, but they are not lesser joys. They are the fruit that has finally ripened, softer, deeper, more nourishing than anything the urgent years could have offered. As you move through these reflections, I want to stay close to one more, because it may be the one that carries the most unspoken weight. Many people, as the years pass and the social world grows quieter, carry a deep and rarely admitted fear. Not exactly of loneliness, but of being alone with themselves. Of what might surface when there is nothing left to do, no role to play, no noise to fill the space, and so they reach for the television, for constant activity, for anything that keeps the interior quiet from becoming too quiet. But Buddhist wisdom understands solitude differently. The Buddha spent long periods in silence, not as deprivation, but as intimacy. In stillness, the mind begins to settle the way silt settles in undisturbed water. And when it settles, what remains is not emptiness. It is awareness. It is the simple, profound recognition that you are accompanied by breath, by presence, by the quiet fact of being alive. From this place, relationships become choices rather than necessities. You connect because you genuinely want to, not because you are afraid of what silence might reveal, the fear of being alone. When it is gently met rather than fled from, dissolves into something unexpectedly warm. You discover that your own company is not something to dread, it is something to come home to. And beneath all of these releases, beneath the roles and the striving and the carried burdens and the need to control and the fear of being alone, there is one more thing that asks, in the deepest hours, for a kind of honest attention. The awareness of finitude, the knowledge that this life, this particular arrangement of breath and memory and love and ordinary Tuesday afternoons will not continue forever. This awareness often lives in the background as a low hum of anxiety, never fully spoken, rarely examined, quietly shaping the way you move through your days. Buddhist teaching does not ask you to pretend that death is not real, and it asks something more honest and more freeing than that. It asks you to look gently, without flinching, without demanding certainty from what cannot offer it. The fear of death, the Buddha observed, arises not from death itself, but from attachment to a fixed identity, to an idea of the self as solid and permanent. But what we call the self has never been static. It has been changing moment by moment for every year of your life. When you sit with this truth long enough, something in the chest loosens. Death stops being an interruption of life and reveals itself as part of it. Not an ending imposed from outside, but a completion that belongs to the same process as every breath you have ever taken. There is a ZEN saying that has accompanied contemplatives for centuries. Not knowing is most intimate. It means that when we stop demanding certainty from life, when we stop requiring that every question be answered before we allow ourselves peace, we come into closer contact with reality as it actually is. Life has never offered complete answers, not in youth, not now. Trying to fully understand life before permitting yourself to rest is like refusing to stop walking until you have reached the horizon. The horizon always moves. You do not need to reach it. You only need to be here, in this step, in this breath, in this quiet afternoon that will not repeat itself. These are not instructions. They are not tasks to complete or a list of ways to improve yourself before you have earned the right to feel at ease. They are invitations, gentle, unhurried, offered without pressure. You do not need to release everything at once. You do not need to feel different by tomorrow. You only need to notice, perhaps for the first time, that the weight you have been carrying was never the price of being alive. It was always optional, and optional things can be set down. Begin wherever you are, with the one belief that feels heaviest today, with the one role that no longer fits, with the one worry that belongs to someone else. Set it down gently, the way you would set down something fragile, with care, with acknowledgement, with the quiet understanding that you are not abandoning anything that ever truly served you. You are simply making room. Room for breath, room for stillness, room for the kind of presence that does not need to justify itself. The fruit does not rush its sweetness. It ripens at exactly the pace it was always going to ripen. And when it is ready, and it is ready completely, not in spite of all the seasons it endured, but because of them, you are that fruit. These years, with their weight and their wisdom and their particular quality of light, are not the end of something. They are the fullness of something that has been slowly, quietly becoming itself for a very long time. May you set down what was never yours to carry. May you rest without apology. May you find in the stillness that is waiting for you right now the peace that has always been closer than you knew. If reflections like this one speak to something in you, something quiet and searching and real, I invite you to stay close. There is more waiting here whenever you are ready.